President Donald Trump has now created a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now, currently, the United States holds about $17 billion worth of Bitcoin, and it's this Bitcoin the Trump administration is going to use as the foundation for this new reserve. And importantly, this comes after Trump banned the establishment of CBDCs. This is technically different. Those are central bank digital currencies. So this is crypto versus centralized bank currencies. And he did that back in the United States back in January. We'll get more into that. Also, in other news, a group of Chinese hackers and spy officials, they were just indicted for a global cyber operation, but this one's different. It turns out that among their operations were attacking us here at the Epoch Times. These attacks were actually explained in a recent indictment, and I'll be telling you all about that. And meanwhile, also, the Trump administration is publicly rejecting one of the major campaigns of the United Nations, Agenda 2030, and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The U.S. no longer backs them. I'll be talking about these stories and a whole lot more today, so let's get started. Folks, first off, cryptocurrencies, they could soon be part of the U.S. National Strategic Reserve. In fact, kind of already are. During a recent event, President Donald Trump announced his administration is exploring ways to do this through Bitcoin. And the move follows another Trump order where he banned centralized banking digital currencies, CBDCs. The government cannot legally get involved with them in the United States as of now. Now, both actions could represent a break of the United States from another global trend right now of mass surveillance in digital payments, becoming the global norm. Now, look, first off on the announcement, though, this was made on Friday during the first White House Crypto Summit, and Trump is saying that this Bitcoin reserve, quote, will be a virtual Fort Knox for digital gold to be housed within the United States Treasury. Watch.
Yesterday, I signed an executive order officially creating our strategic Bitcoin reserve, and this will be a virtual Fort Knox for digital gold to be housed within the United States Treasury. That's a big thing, Scott. The federal government is already among the largest holders of Bitcoin, as you know, really one of the largest holders in the world, with as many as 200,000 Bitcoin obtained via civil law and various other forms of law, and including enforcement actions. These existing holdings will form the foundation of the new reserve. Unfortunately, in recent years, the U.S. government has foolishly sold tens of thousands of additional Bitcoin that were worth billions and billions of dollars had they not sold them, but they did sell them, mostly during the Biden administration. And not a good thing to have done. From this day on, America will follow the rule that every Bitcoin knows very well: never sell your Bitcoin. That's a little phrase that they have. I don't know if that's right or not. Who the hell knows, right?
Already, the U.S. government is actually among the largest holders of Bitcoin in the world, like Trump said. We currently have about $17 billion worth of Bitcoin. That's 200,000 tokens. And this was through seizing them from criminal forfeitures. What a way to get them, right? And it's this Bitcoin that the Trump administration is going to use to kickstart the new reserve. Now, look, the basis of these moves is a new executive order that Trump signed on March 6th that could boost American leadership in digital assets and in financial technology. This order also established the strategic Bitcoin reserve that's going to work as a national stockpile that could be used in the future, kind of similar to a gold reserve. Now, the Trump administration, Trump referred to this as a digital gold system. He noted the supply of Bitcoin, it's capped at 21 million coins. It has never been hacked. People can steal it, but that's not hacking Bitcoin itself, suggesting that it's secure enough to use for this and scarce enough, and he's going to be using this to justify these actions. Now, leading up to this order, Trump had already begun discussing this as a possibility. On March 2nd, Trump wrote on Truth Social, quote, "A U.S. crypto reserve will elevate this critical industry after years of corrupt attacks by the Biden administration, which is why my executive order on digital assets directing the presidential working group to move forward on a crypto strategic reserve that includes XRP, SOL, and ADA. He said, "I will make sure the U.S. is the crypto capital of the world. We are making America great again." And he followed up that statement saying this. He said, "And obviously Bitcoin, BTC, and ETH, Ethereum, as other valuable cryptocurrencies will be the heart of the reserve. I also love Bitcoin and Ethereum," Trump said. And he adds that a U.S. crypto reserve will elevate this critical industry after years of corrupt attacks by the Biden administration. Going again into that. Now look, after signing this executive order, Trump said on March 7th, quote, "Last year, I promised to make America the Bitcoin superpower of the world and the crypto capital of the planet, and we're taking historic action to deliver on that promise. Crypto, making America great again." He's going off on this. Look, now on an important point, and this should be clarified, there's a very fine line between cryptocurrency and centralized banking digital currencies, or CBDCs. And understanding this difference is also understanding the difference between what the United States is doing and frankly most of the world is doing right now. Most of the world is moving to what they call stablecoin or CBDCs. That is centralized, monitored, surveilled, everything is seen. The United States is going crypto. Crypto means encrypted. Crypto means privacy. And so the United States backing this is basically a battle over the surveillance state regarding your purchases and everything else. Now, importantly, both of these are forms of digital currency, but breaking it down, as the name suggests with cryptocurrencies, they include types of encryption that makes it more difficult for the payments to be tracked, and they do take steps to protect the anonymity of the users. They also bypass the centralized banks, which is why a lot of libertarians like them. Although it's also possible this could change as governments start to regulate things with Bitcoin. Maybe they'll want to start seeing that. Maybe they'll develop new technologies to monitor it. Who knows what the future may hold. But CBDCs already represent that type of surveillance, right? Now, as the name suggests with CBDCs, they are done through centralized banks. And unlike cryptocurrencies, which get rid of the middlemen, like the banks or the Federal Reserve, well, CBDCs are actually heavily controlled. They're centralized, they're tied in with the banks, tied in with the Federal Reserve. In some cases, they're promoting their own. And importantly, they're heavily monitored. Nothing goes through without being seen. Every payment is visible. Every transaction is trackable. Everything is cancelable if they don't want you doing it. Nothing happens with the CBDC that is not watched and regulated in some way. And that's the direction most of the world is going in right now. Now, importantly, on this point, Trump banned the establishment of CBDCs in the United States. Now, he signed an order on this back in January in a presidential action titled Strengthening American Leadership in Digital Financial Technology. And here's what the order says in relation to CBDCs. This is the White House just a few weeks ago. He said, quote, "Taking measures to protect Americans from the risks of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, which threaten the stability of the financial system, individual privacy, and the sovereignty of the United States, including by prohibiting the establishment, issuance, circulation, and use of a CBDC within the jurisdiction of the United States." You can't do it. He said, "Except to the extent required by law, agencies are hereby prohibited from undertaking any action to establish, issue, or promote CBDC within the jurisdiction of the United States or abroad. Except to the extent required by law, any ongoing plans or initiatives at any agency related to the creation of a CBDC within the jurisdiction of the United States shall be immediately terminated, and no further actions may be taken to develop or implement such plans or initiatives." Meaning CBDCs are now banned in the U.S., at least at the government level. Now, the hard reality with this is part of the global trend right now. This is the direction the entire global financial institution is moving towards. They want to view everything. They want to control everything. Most countries on Earth, as we speak, are working on some type of digital currency. Mainly for them, it's what they call stable coin, which I'll explain, or CBDCs. The crypto thing is kind of new. Trump's taking that road, possibly breaking that door open as a way to fight back against it. But part of this also is because of the internet, online shopping. Maybe we've done this to ourselves, right? We use credit cards, we use digital payments for most things now. And also because of changes that took place during COVID-19. You might remember, a lot of stores moved to quote-unquote cashless payments. They didn't want to touch your dirty money, right? They said pay with credit card. This is cashless, contactless payment, they call it. Remember that? And you no longer had the option to pay with cash. You couldn't do it if you wanted to. But there are also some countries looking at things like stable coins, as I mentioned. Stable coins are a bit different. That would be something like a dollar-backed digital currency or something like the digital euro in Europe, meaning they're basically CBDCs, but they're done through the, maybe like the Federal Reserve would do it and replace the dollar with something like that, or just back the dollar using these digital currencies. And the problem with those is they're not much different from a CBDC, just a centralized bank digital currencies, because centralized banks print some of the money, right? So the real issue globally right now is that the world is going in this direction. And for Trump now to look at cryptocurrency instead, this kind of sends a divergent message in terms of who is going to gain power over these currencies. And it also leans more in the direction of individual privacy. Meaning, of course, while every country wants to monitor all payments, Trump is saying the government should not be able to do that, and cryptocurrency might give a way of achieving that, although we will see. It could also be argued that Trump's order on crypto, it could open the door for this, basically. It could open the door for a type of centralized bank digital currency or a stable coin in the United States. Yes, Trump has put protections in place against that. He has banned the use of CBDCs and all the problems that come along with them. But because this was done through a presidential action, it's not that solid. It can be overturned. And on that point, Congress is considering making it law. This would make it a lot more stable. Mike Lee, Republican senator from Utah, said this on February 6th. He said he reintroduced the No CBDC Act to prevent the Federal Reserve, which prints your money. It's neither federal nor a reserve, but the bank notes in your pocket say Federal Reserve note, right? And so it will prevent the Federal Reserve from reshaping the U.S. financial sector and having the ability to monitor consumer transactions through a central bank digital currency. President Donald Trump, he said, recently banned federal agencies from creating a CBDC through an executive order. This legislation would enshrine the ban permanently in law. It is co-sponsored by Senators Ted Cruz, Rick Scott, and in the Senate. And then Representative Andy Ogles is introducing the House Companion Bill, he said. And he adds, quote, "The United States does not need to create a central bank digital currency to know it is bad." This is Senator Lee. And he added, quote, "We've seen this play out in China with the digital yuan." They've already done it. He said in early trials, China canceled its citizens' money after a set period, forcing Chinese citizens to spend their savings at the compulsion of the government. You don't have control over what you spend your money on anymore, he's saying, right? And he said, my bill protects Americans from a similar intrusion by prohibiting the Federal Reserve or any federal government agency from minting or issuing a CBDC, whether through a direct-to-consumer or intermediated model. And he adds, quote, "CBDCs are nothing more than a tool for tyrants to intimidate, control, and surveil the activities of American citizens. And it is my duty as a patriot to stop them." That's Representative Andy Ogles. And he added, "I am honored to co-lead this effort with Senator Lee." Now, of course, there are still global pushes on this. Trump has sent a very divergent message to that push. We will see what happens as this new battle unfolds, folks. Now, look, in other news, a group of Chinese hackers and spy officials, they were just indicted, charged. They're not arrested yet because, well, they're in China. The U.S. government has a $10 million reward out for them. They were launching a global spy operation online, and guess what? We found out they were attacking us. One of their biggest targets was the Epoch Times. They were coming after us, and we only found out about it because they got indicted. Epoch Times said this: U.S. authorities have charged a dozen Chinese contract hackers, they're like mercenary hackers the CCP was hiring, and law enforcement officials, notably with the same branch of the CCP that runs the overseas secret Chinese police stations. And it says for their involvement in a years-long hacking campaign to steal data from the U.S. government and undermine dissident groups. It says the Epoch Times has learned that it was a victim of the hacking campaign. They came after us. 8 of the defendants work for iSoon, a Chinese tech firm that has hacked victims around the globe, including U.S. government agencies and dissident groups that the Chinese Communist Party considers a threat, according to the Department of Justice, DOJ, filings released on March 5th. It notes from 2016 through 2023, iSoon, this hacker group they were hiring, breached email accounts, cell phone servers, and websites under Beijing's instructions and made tens of millions of dollars from doing so, according to the DOJ. The company allegedly worked with 43 Chinese regime intelligence or police bureaus, charging between $10,000 and $75,000 for each email inbox hacked. I've reported this before. Actually, the CCP outsources a lot of its operations to just mercenary hacker groups. And of course, this is now revealed. And it says this, quote, its victims include the Epoch Times, a New York-based newspaper that publishes China-related news critical of the Chinese regime, an organization that promotes human rights in China, a U.S. religious organization with thousands of churches. They're going after a Christian group that does missionary work in China. Also a Washington-based U.S.-funded news service, the foreign ministries of Taiwan, India, South Korea, and Indonesia, a U.S.-based religious leader, and the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, U.S. Department of Commerce, and New York State Assembly. And notes the iSoon associates, as well as 2 officials from China's Ministry of Public Security, are charged with conspiracy to commit computer intrusions and conspiracy to commit wire fraud, with a combined maximum penalty of 20 years in prison if they can arrest them. Because, again, they're in China, we can't extradite them. Now, interestingly, according to the indictment, they had breached the devices of our former CEO and our vice president. And from what's been revealed, basically, it seems the Chinese Communist Party was trying to find the identities of our sources in China because they wanted to arrest our sources. As many of you know, the Epoch Times, we get a lot of exclusive information from very good sources around the world. That includes people in China who've helped break major stories exposing the CCP. We have some very good sources. The CCP was trying to target them. And the Chinese Communist Party was also trying to get the IP addresses of people in China who were accessing our website. Because what more subversive thing can you do than read the Epoch Times, right? They wanted to locate our readers in China, which is, blacklisted in China, but we have a lot of readers in China, because they wanted to target them, possibly arrest them. This is now revealed in this indictment. They were coming after us. And look, it's a bit shocking to see this come out, although honestly not unexpected. Personally, they've done this against us for a long time. I'm personally glad the Justice Department is going after the CCP agents also. It seems this is part of a bigger thing. We've actually seen a lot of Chinese agents arrested, including in the U.S., who were also targeting us. And it does corroborate what I've been saying on the show, that we've gotten leaked information saying the CCP is just kind of coming after us right now. Speaking of which, the Epoch Times also just uncovered something pretty big. Folks, we've been talking about the New York Times making these fake hit pieces on Shen Yun, taking quotes out of context, getting sources, of course, who are listed as being tied in with the CCP spy apparatus. It turns out while the New York Times has been releasing its streams of hit pieces against us and against Shen Yun Performing Arts, a massive network of fake accounts with ties to the CCP were spreading the New York Times hit pieces. We actually uncovered this. X has now confirmed it, and X, formerly Twitter, has deleted thousands of these fake accounts that were boosting the New York Times. Folks, the Epoch Times said this. We found it out. Thousands of accounts with suspected links to the Chinese Communist Party have been removed by social media platform X over the past month. The accounts, which exhibit inauthentic activity, have been used to boost articles published by the New York Times that targeted a religious group persecuted in China. Now, I know it's one of the articles, a Chinese language version of an attack piece on Shenyang Performing Arts, was boosted so much, it became the most shared New York Times article on X in more than a year. Their most popular article ever. The problem is it was fake promotions by fake accounts. Now, it notes, according to data from BuzzSumo, a social media analytics tool, we found this out. And basically what we found was that thousands upon thousands of fake accounts, which were seemingly dedicated to promoting the CCP's human rights abuses, were boosting the New York Times. Isn't that interesting? And X confirmed this. X has now deleted the New York Times bots tied in with the CCP. Now, folks, also on a related note, the FBI under Kash Patel, they've now rolled out treason charges, and their charges for this are against alleged Chinese spies. 3 individuals are now facing charges for treason against the United States after allegedly trying to sell secrets to China. This is the Department of Justice on this. Folks, this is Kash Patel coming into office and what he's doing, right? And notes that one of these individuals, it says, Jian Zhao and Li Tian, active duty U.S. Army soldiers stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord, along with Rio Duan, a former U.S. Army soldier, were arrested today following indictments by federal grand juries. Tian Duan, they were charged in the District of Oregon for conspiring to commit bribery and theft of government property. Zhao was charged in the Western District of Washington for conspiring to obtain and transmit national defense information to an individual not authorized to receive it, and also for bribery and theft of government property. It notes the indictment alleges that beginning on or about November 28, 2021, and continuing to at least or on about December 19, 2024, these 2 individuals, Duan and Tian, along with others, it says, conspired with each other to surreptitiously gather sensitive military information related to the United States Army's operational capabilities, including technical manuals and other sensitive information, and that Tian, the other individual, transmitted this information to Duan in return for money, in violation of his official duties as an active duty U.S. Army officer. And to note specifically, Tian was tasked with gathering information related to U.S. military weapon systems, including information related to the Bradley and Stryker U.S. Army fighting vehicles, and transmitting them to Duan. The indictment also alleges, it says, that beginning in or about July 2024 and continuing to the date of the arrest, Jian Zhao, an active duty U.S. Army supply sergeant, conspired with others known and unknown to the grand jury to obtain and transmit national defense information to individuals based in China. They were stealing our key defense information and sending it to China. And these guys were working with the U.S. military, right? They had enlisted. Importantly, not a lot of people know this, we let non-U.S. citizens enlist in our military. It's actually a pathway to citizenship. If you go to Chinatown, you will see lines outside of some of the enlistment offices because so many of them are trying to enlist. There are a lot of them, and it's problematic if they then turn into spies selling our private information, selling our defense information to China, or work as spies within the military during a time of war. These individuals are being accused of something very similar. Now, notes as well, specifically, Zhao was charged for his conspiracy to collect and transmit several classified hard drives, including hard drives marked secret and top secret, negotiating with individuals based in China for their sale, and agreeing to send the classified hard drives to the individuals in China in exchange for the sale of the classified hard drives. It said he received at least $10,000. Now, again, this is Kash Patel coming into the FBI and rolling out a very big charge. And it does seem as well that, well, they might be doing something about this, and treason charges is no small matter. Folks, in other news, and on a lighter note, daylight savings time is here yet again. If you feel you've lost an hour of sleep, it's because you did. And there's a national discussion on whether we should keep doing this to ourselves. It seems the nation is getting behind the idea of bringing an end to the practice of, continuing to make our clocks different, springing forward, moving the clocks back an hour in the fall. And the question now is, well, which one should we end it on? Senator Rick Scott, a Republican from Florida, raised the issue in a recent statement, along with his reintroduction of the Sunshine Protection Act. Watch this.
Hi, Senator Rick Scott here. I hear from Americans, it seems like every day, they're sick and tired of changing their clocks back and forth. I mean, we need to lock the clock. Now we have President Trump in the White House. He agrees. Lock the clock. I have a bill. It's called the Sunshine Protection Act, which would lock the clock and stop this forever changing twice a year. So let's make sure this is the last time we have to change our clocks.
Now, on the debate of which side of daylight savings we should keep, it's actually pretty close. It seems most Americans lean towards keeping standard time all year. Senator Mike Lee, a Republican from Utah, he posted a poll on this. It closed at about 41,802 votes. It showed that only 7.6% of people want to keep things as they are. Only 7.6% say, I love daylight savings time, let's keep it. 40.2% would be up for ending the changing of the clocks, but they want to keep it with, technically what would be daylight savings time, which is remove our clocks forward an hour, then just leave it that way. 52.3% want to get rid of changing the clocks, but they want to keep standard time. That's where we would, set the clocks back an hour and then never change it again, hopefully, right? That's the idea. Now, on another topic, though, Trump has been talking a lot about making Canada the 51st state, bringing in Greenland as part of the United States, maybe making Gaza the Riviera of the Middle East, taking back the Panama Canal. He's talking about all these global acquisitions. And it's possible the United States could also relinquish one of its territories. At least there are people pushing for this. There's now talk that Puerto Rico could become independent. At least there's a campaign for it. And in terms of the United States, this could save the U.S. over $500 billion every single year because we pay a lot of money to keep Puerto Rico running. There are movements in Puerto Rico also calling for independence. The Daily Mail said this: Donald Trump is being lobbied to make Puerto Rico an independent nation and save American taxpayers $617.8 billion, Dailycom.mail has learned. It says at least 2 congressional offices are in possession of a 7-page draft executive order on how the U.S. can help the island territory transition to independence. The committee has jurisdiction over issues relating to Puerto Rico and other U.S. territories, but committee officials did not reply to a request for comment, it says. The order appears to have been drawn up by a congressional office and leaders of Puerto Rico secessionist efforts and not the White House. But it is clear, it says, efforts to apply pressure on the White House to transition Puerto Rico out of its current status as a U.S. territory. They note Trump has not indicated that the U.S. wants to rid the U.S. of the territory. Now, look, on this point, it's not clear if Trump would actually go for this. I personally don't think he would. Now, on one side, he could say, look, we could save $500 billion, that plus the Doge cuts and everything else, that may be enough to get us out of debt. We pay about as much money to Puerto Rico as we do to sustain most of the U.S. states. It's a lot of money. It seems right now that Trump's ambitions are for more U.S. territory, though, not less. And this is the other side of it. Puerto Rico is actually very important in terms of influence. It's one of the kind of footprints of the United States in the Caribbean. And for the U.S. to lose that would be strategically disadvantageous for us. It would be very important for the United States to maintain it, and again, just surrendering it may not be a very good idea, especially as the Chinese Communist Party is trying to move into that region as well. You have Cuba, you have other U.S. enemies there. Surrendering that would be surrendering control to an extent over the Caribbean. But like in other news, it seems that many globalist agendas, they are falling apart right before our eyes. And now the Trump administration is publicly rejecting one of the major campaigns from the United Nations. We've talked about it before, Agenda 2030, and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I'll be talking more about this after I come back from a quick break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges with a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold. You can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. Many globalist agendas are now falling apart right before our eyes. Trump, right now, the administration, is publicly rejecting one of the major pieces in all of this, one of the major campaigns from the United Nations, that is Agenda 2030 and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Newsmax said this: in a speech before the United Nations General Assembly, a representative of President Donald Trump's administration rejected the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Edward Hartney, a minister counselor at U.S. Mission to the United Nations, called the 2030 Agenda, quote, a program of soft global governance that is inconsistent with U.S. sovereignty and adverse to the rights and interests of Americans. And it's these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, including ending poverty, which means other things, by the way, achieving gender equality, and urgently tackling climate change, among many others. The Trump administration now says it rejects and denounces them, and others, including providing clean water and sanitation, it says, remember this is Newsmax, folks, for all people, quality education for every child, and promoting good health and economic growth. It notes that Edward Hartney, a minister counselor at the UN Mission to the United Nations, said these goals advance a program of soft global governance that is inconsistent with the interests of the U.S., and UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric said all 193 member states voted unanimously to deliver on the goals, and that the UN is holding on to its guiding policies to advance a world of peace, prosperity, and dignity for all. Now look, they have a lot of these things on the surface, like ending world hunger, creating equality, making everybody happy. And when you say you oppose that, they're like, why do you want to not make everybody happy? The problem is when you dig into the actual content of what that means. For example, if they have a feeding everyone initiative, who doesn't want to feed everyone? What it often means in practice is a global centralized system to maybe take over farms, a global centralized system to explore, maybe like a new type of farming system, or maybe putting farmers out of work in the Netherlands or something like that. In practice, a lot of these things do not represent what they say on the surface, which is one of the big arguments against it. They can say creating global equality, which in a way just means global equity, meaning global socialism, really. And again, it's a difference in language. You have people who say they believe in tolerance and happiness for all, but what does it mean in practice? It means, well, intolerance and unhappiness for all. And so you can't just take the global labels as being what they mean on the surface. The issue the United States is now raising is that as the United Nations is advancing this agenda, it's creating different criteria that have to be adopted by every single state that joins in with it. So if you're part of it, you have to assign into this pseudo-governmental system of the United Nations for global warming initiatives, environmental initiatives, water initiatives, basically the control of all natural resources through a global centralized system. And as the United States now says, they believe this undermines the sovereignty of our country. By breaking away from this, this does mean the United States is taking a stance against it. This is not to say that whole agenda is coming to an end by any means, though, because most of the world is still signed on with it. And unless the Trump administration does something much stronger to maybe stop it, in 4 or 8 years, it's possible the UN could just restart it again. Although they're going to keep going with or without the United States, very likely. But also, look, as we've discussed previously on the show, there are a lot of movements to create things like this. One of the big ones is the 15-minute cities. They want to reimagine how we all live. Live in your pod, right? You will own nothing and you will be happy. There's a vision of making it so that all cities are walkable. They want to replace single-family homes with townhouses and apartment buildings. They want to have everything reachable. You never have to leave your few city blocks. Now, one of the bigger programs for this is what's called the Line. This is a mega city structure in Saudi Arabia, right in the smack dab of the desert. Now, it's about as tall as the Empire State Building, and it just stretches very, very far. There's a few other systems with it. Now, this was imagined to eventually house millions of people. They've already started building it. They're trying to do it right now. And as of now, well, it's not clear they're going to be able to finish it anymore. It's running into some major problems. Wall Street Journal said this: after spending more than $50 billion, the Crown Prince's sci-fi inspired dreams, an arid-mounted ski resort, a floating business district, and the Line, the 106-mile-long pair of Empire State Building height skyscrapers that is NEOM's centerpiece, have collided with reality. It said costs have soared, delays are ubiquitous, and a decision last year to reduce NEOM's first phase threatens to deprive the desert city of the critical mass of inhabitants needed to make it a modern business hub. It said in a sign of massive ambitions of the project, a draft board presentation from last summer pegged the capital expenditure required to build NEOM, this whole system, to its end state by 2080, very far out, at $8.8 trillion. It's not going to be done until 2080, and that's if they can shell out $8.8 trillion, and that's if the money doesn't rise again, because the costs have been going up every time they look at it. They know that's more than 25 times the annual Saudi budget, and $370 billion for the first phase by 2035, which is already past due and over budget as well. Now it notes the Saudi state is funding the lion's share of the NEOM initial cost, although officials hope private investors will eventually share the burden. And it's not going so well so far. We'll see whether it actually happens. People noted that one of the big events they had, the big unveiling, the Crown Prince didn't even show up to it, suggesting that he's a bit unhappy with the way it's going. As of now, there's no word on them actually ending the program, but finishing it seems increasingly difficult, if not unlikely. That said, everyone, hit the like button, leave a comment. Let's jump into some questions. All right, first question, Science Chick 72. You're saying funny how all the crypto banks are not buying crypto. Sorry, the central banks are not buying crypto. Yeah, it's because it's a different system. The central banks, it would actually make sense for them to buy crypto. I actually do know that some of the investment firms, they are buying Bitcoin. This has been allowed to an extent. You do have a lot of them buying, crypto technically. But the central banks have a very different agenda. This is what a lot of countries are trying to do. They want to create digital currencies, and then they want to effectively incriminate cryptocurrencies. They want to frame cryptocurrencies as like deep web or dark web purchases. Dark money. You can't, meaning, what does that mean? Dark money. It means you can't trace it, right? We can't see what you're spending your money on. I think we're not far off from them claiming the US dollar, like physical currency, is dark money because you can't watch everything they're buying with it, right? When it comes to the central banks, there's a lot of efforts right now for them to create CBDCs. And, the Federal Reserve is working on it. You have a lot of private businesses working on it. Meta with Facebook, they were trying to build a kind of a pseudo CBDC system. When it comes to the global financial system, because many countries have already adopted CBDCs, China has it, for example, they require companies doing business with them to trade in the digital currencies. And so because of that, the global financial system has had to create technologies that allow for those types of transactions, meaning the foundation is already in place. The foundation for CBDCs is already in place. The technical thing in the United States is that technically, for us to issue a CBDC, you would need approval from Congress. It would have to go through the legislative process. They couldn't just do it because they feel like it. You know what I mean? The Fed could not just do it. Meta could not just do it. They need clearance from Congress. But there are a lot of organizations building it. And, you know, I do think if the United States could move to crypto as an alternative to it, it is better. I personally don't like either. I'm aware you can make a lot of money with Bitcoin. I personally don't like what digital currencies represent, even though I could probably make a lot of money by investing in them right now. I'm not going to do it. I don't personally like the future we're creating with these technologies. I feel that even supporting it is giving a nod to that type of future, which I don't want personally. But on that front, the reality is this: there is a battle globally over what type of digital currency is going to be developed. It's not even a battle over whether it's going to happen. It's a battle over what it is going to be. And in my opinion, if the United States can advance crypto, at least maintaining some type of privacy and security for digital transactions, that's better than the alternative. I still hope that they allow for cash and other things. My biggest concern is what we've seen with, for example, debanking. TD Bank, for example, has actively been canceling the bank accounts of Chinese dissidents. I can say this for a fact because I know people have been victim of this. You have a lot of the big banks that have canceled the accounts of people under what seem to be purely political motives. And if you allow those same banks to effectively control every single transaction and they can just cancel you, that's what's happening in China. I haven't shown you these videos, but in China, because they have the social credit system, there's videos right now of just people, just mass homelessness. And the homelessness, it's people who've been canceled under the social credit system. You're not a good citizen, and so you can't make transactions, you can't buy a house. You are rendered homeless because of the centralized control of the financial system. It's crazy. That is the future we are moving to if we allow that to happen. And I personally hope the United States never allows that to happen. I believe Trump is fighting that battle, but again, there are people who want it. Emotion 007, you're saying, by having Bitcoin in play, does that mean we can get rid of the Federal Reserve? It's probably not a bad idea. Potentially. Which is I know a lot of guys who are libertarians. They love Bitcoin. They love Ethereum. Trump seems to love it. Maybe Trump coin, which he did launch, could be the new Federal Reserve currency. One of the reasons why a lot of libertarians like cryptocurrency and not CBDCs, which are centralized bank currencies, they like cryptocurrencies because they bypass the banking system. They do work outside of the Federal Reserve. They do work outside the banks. To an extent, they cut out the middlemen. And if you can cut the middlemen out of the global financial system, it means direct you to the person you're buying from, like direct transaction. A lot of people argue it's closer to bartering, right, in terms of how the transaction system actually works. And because it's more similar to bartering, you don't have to have the centralized control systems. In addition to that, it maintains, to an extent, a type of privacy in place that prevents full surveillance. That's not absolute. Let me explain how that works. When it comes to cryptocurrencies, technically every purchase is viewable. If a purchase takes place, it is viewable, but they don't know who made the purchase. That's the technicality of it. It's not made clear who is buying what. Now, I wouldn't say it's absolute because, look, let's put it this way. If you, as an individual, let's say you live in California, right? Or you live in New York, You make a purchase of Bitcoin, you buy some socks from an online vendor using Bitcoin. The transaction goes through, it's viewable online, you can actually see it. And then a delivery is made to your address for socks. The processing of the delivery, once that company goes through the process of doing it, has it delivered to your house, you receive it. That is viewable. It goes through the postal system. And as soon as you couple the postal system with the transaction, with the viewable payment, then you can begin basically working your way back and you can trace it. I would not say by any means it's as secure as people might believe it is. Because as soon as you deal with physical shipments, it starts to become traceable. And I do believe eventually they could trace it back to your Bitcoin wallet and you're in the same situation. The difference is they can't control the whole process. It's based on this that I personally still do not like any kind of digital currency. I would pay everything in cash if I could. I'm realistic about this. Other people would argue, look, if you're buying things from Amazon or Walmart online and you pay with a credit card, or if you go to the store and pay with your credit card, it's no different. For the most part, you can see everything you purchase on a credit card payment as well. Technically, we're already in such a state where credit cards or Venmo or whatever else, or PayPal, whatever you choose to use, these are all digital payment and digital transaction systems. What's the difference between that and having it based on a digital currency or a digital coin? It's not much different. So the counter argument to what I'm saying would be that we're already there. This is already the reality we live in. And maybe I'm fighting the tides in an up and unwinnable, battle. But anyways, to that point, when it comes to any digital transaction, cryptocurrencies do protect the individual more so than what else is out there. And they also do bypass the centralized systems, including the banks, including the Federal Reserve for the US, and including whatever you have globally. And based on that, many people would argue, great, why not do more of it? I'm still a fan of cash. Let's see here. Kenneth Harris, you're saying, the last thing we want is governments controlling and monitoring your every purchase. We already have seen in Canada what debanking looks like on the Canadian trucker protests. That's right, that was one of the bigger ones during the great honkening of Canada. You might remember what happened with that. I believe it was truckers and they were protesting the COVID lockdowns, right? Or protesting the vaccine mandates. Maybe it was a combination of both. And you had truckers, people who drive these trucks, basically saying, you guys are destroying our jobs through these lockdowns. We're not going to go along with these vaccine policies. We're going to go out of business. And so a lot of these truckers drove their semi-trucks and everything else into the cities, and they enacted the honkening. The goose honked loudly in Canada. And, honking very loudly, constantly. Canada freaked out. The great protectors of freedom and equality of the world decided that the truckers should have neither freedom nor equality. And what they ended up doing is they brought the military in they brought the military and they declared martial law. And they had a lot of these people taken down, arrested, whatever else. And they also debanked them. They went after the bank accounts, not just of the truckers, the people involved, but also some of the supporters. And that was a real shot over the bow for people. A lot of people got really concerned about that because it showed what they can do by debanking you, that destroying your ability to, again, use the financial system. It's crazy when you think about it. Understand what it means if you get debanked. If you lose your bank, what does that mean? Well, you can't buy a house, you can't buy a car, you can't get loans, any kind of payment over a certain amount you can't really engage in. It's even hard to get paid from a business if you don't have a bank account. What do you do, right? You ask your boss, hey boss, pay me in cash this month. Maybe like some under the table restaurant job will do that for you. but most of them won't. Most businesses are not going to pay you in like cash. They just won't do it. So it's hard for you to get paid. You can't cash your checks. A lot of places will not accept cash. Try to pay your rent in cash. Maybe if you have a private landlord, they'll accept it, but a lot of businesses won't. And so you're cut off. And if you understand what that means, if your only option then is paying in cash, and you try to go to another bank, and that bank says that you're a liability because this other bank canceled you, and if they view you as a liability, it's hard to get another one, or you have to pay more money for it because you've been canceled by this one, what do you do? Now, we still luckily have physical currency. We still have cash. And thank goodness we do, because that's kind of the fallback to all this. But what happens if cash goes away? What happens if you no longer have physical currency to fall back on? It means that if a bank cancels you, you can't buy food anymore. If a bank cancels you, you have nowhere to sleep. You cannot buy a house, you cannot buy a car, you can't buy anything. You can't go to the local McDonald's and buy a cheeseburger to save your life because you no longer have the means to make a payment. If, again, cash is eliminated, or if they go to a no-cash system. That is the future being created with central bank digital currencies and with this whole even debanking system. And case in point, that is already the reality in China. That is already happening in China, where, again, you have homeless people who are homeless because they've been canceled by the system, because they failed the good citizen test, because maybe they said something mean against the Communist Party. That is the reality being created. And I know we're like, well, free world, debanking is happening in the United States. Trump and Don Jr. is talking about it. Debanking is happening in the United States. Banks are already debanking people. Canada has seen debanking. The United Kingdom, the UK, has seen debanking. And if what I would call still some of the most free countries on earth are already doing this, it's already happening, what does it mean if we go a little further? I think we're at a very dangerous place right now in terms of global freedom as it relates to this. And I think if nothing is done, both to stop the creation of CBDCs and to stop the issue of debanking, this is almost an inevitable future we're moving into. Something needs to be done to stop it. And of course, in the United States as well, because of the way the global financial crisis worked out and the central banks, the Federal Reserve bails out banks when they act in ways that are not very nice. This has the effect of basically consolidating a lot of banks because of the way some of the financial protection systems work. The big banks are the safest ones. That has led a lot of smaller banks to go out of business, meaning we're seeing a consolidation and centralization of the banking system also. And so you're being left with fewer places to turn to. I personally do hope the Trump administration puts something permanent in place to stop this trend, because we are on a very dangerous track right now. And again, to my point, that's also why I don't like digital currencies at all. I don't like CBDCs. I won't even use crypto, even though I understand the positive arguments for crypto, because I don't like what they stand for. I think that even by engaging in digital currencies, we are helping create that future, which I don't want, personally. Corn Pop, you're saying, Corn Pop. You're saying, Josh, why doesn't Trump have Congress follow up his executive orders with matching bills so that his executive orders are not undone after he's gone? Otherwise, we'll be right back where we started. There are some movements for that. You could argue, Trump can, of course, encourage Congress, but because we have separation of powers, he can't fully push it. Congress, of course, would be the legislative branch. Trump as president is the executive branch. Then you have, of course, the judicial branch. You do have Congress making moves on a lot of things. One of the big things they're doing right now is the one big beautiful bill, as Trump calls it. Currently, Republicans do have a working bill. Trump is encouraging them to sign it. And if Republicans do sign that, it will place into law many of Trump's orders. It will actually enact a lot of what Trump is trying to do in American law. In addition to that, whenever Trump does enact executive orders, you also do see a lot of representatives and senators create matching legislation. For example, with the move against CBDCs, as soon as Trump announced it, you had a senator in the Senate, of course, and a representative in the House introduce immediately bills to enact into law Trump's executive order. And so there are movements on this. It is happening, but I would say the other side of it is too. Remember, folks, we live in a representative democracy. A representative democracy is a republic. And what does a representative democracy mean? It means these elected officials represent you, the American people. And if you want them to support something, well, you play a role in it. If you believe something should be done, you should call your senator. You should call your local representative because they are representing your interests in Congress. This is part of the way the American system works. Send them an email. Call their offices if they're doing something you want them to do or if you want to encourage them to do something. This is a power that exists in the American system. And unfortunately, because so many Americans have disengaged from it, we've allowed lobbyist groups and special interest groups to basically fill that gap. I personally believe that the basis of a free society is civic engagement. If you care about this stuff, you need to get engaged. My activist speech of the day, but really it is the case. So if you believe some of this should be done, I would recommend call your local representative and tell them that you want to see it done. TZ Burton, you're saying, Josh, can we assume many Chinese immigrants are being forced to be spies for the CCP to steal secrets from companies, colleges, and government? It does happen. The Chinese Communist Party will threaten the family members of Chinese citizens and even their kids. In fact, a lot of these operations are run through a Chinese Communist Party branch called the United Front Work Department. Working alongside that, to the extent that they even sometimes share offices, is what's called the Overseas Chinese Affairs Office. The Overseas Chinese Affairs Office, as the name suggests, manages overseas Chinese. And so if your grandma left China and your mom was born in America and you were born in America, you're a second-generation Chinese, this office will have you in their database. They will try to pressure you. And so this doesn't even apply just to like Chinese citizens or people who are new immigrants. It applies to their children. It applies to their grandchildren. Maybe it'll apply to their great-grandchildren. And the CCP will pressure them. If you work in a business, for example, maybe you work in a financial sector, it might not be like, it's not going to be like Xi Jinping calls you up and says, hey, comrade, do a favor for the motherland. It's going to look like this. There's going to be a Chinese businessman who comes and says, oh, my friend, you're Chinese like me. We're brothers, united. Have you been to China? And you're like a second or third generation Chinese. No, I've never been. My mom says she was there. She didn't have a good time. She watched her classmates get run over by tanks. And he's like, oh, no, that never happened. Pay no heed to the Tiananmen Square massacre. Nothing happened on June 4th. But he'll be like, you should come and see it. And they'll invite you to China. They'll treat you like a prince. They'll wine and dine you. They'll sell you on all their propaganda. And then you'll go back and you'll be like, wow, that was such a great experience. You start to develop a friendship with this person. You can call me Uncle Jow. Uncle Jow is your friend. Uncle Jow will do anything for you. And then one day, Uncle Jow asks you to do something for him, right? That's the way it goes. One day, Uncle Jow wants a favor back, and you feel indebted to Uncle Jow. Uncle Jow says, look, nephew, cousin, I need you to do a favor for me. You're working at this business. How much money do they make every year? It's not a big deal. Nobody cares about this. I hear they have very interesting designs of the Bradley fighting vehicle, like these guys just got arrested for. I hear they have very interesting designs. Can you send it to me? I'm a big fan of this. I find it very interesting. You do it. And then they start asking you for more and more and more. And then what happens is you get roped into this, and before you know it, you're in over your head. They start paying you for it, and you understand that you are committing crimes by that point. And basically, because you're already guilty, it's very hard for you to get out of it. They use this very aggressively. That basic method is what they use against a lot of people. And a lot of people may not even realize initially what they're doing. Actually, on this point, I've been talking a lot about some of the attacks on Shen Yun and Falun Gong and Epoch Times. I noted the CCP has campaigns against us right now. We've actually had some people come out and say they got paid. YouTubers, for example, people on Instagram. From what we're hearing about, and we're still researching it, it seems the CCP, anybody with over like 50,000 followers, the CCP has been offering them money. They're paying them like $300 to post, hit pieces against us, basically. And remember, that can be a crime. There have been people arrested for doing similar things with Russia, for example. It is a major crime if you do that, and I would assume a lot of people. Maybe during that initial stage of getting engaged in foreign espionage, they may not realize what they're doing, but it is a crime. And a lot of people get roped into it through that very gradual system. That is how it works. We'll go a few more questions, folks. Jerry says, before the affordability of an automobile, weren't most cities 15-minute cities? Yeah, that's true, actually. People lived above their shop/restaurants in small townhomes close to a factory, etc. A walkable city is fine, just don't track people's movements. Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I live in a pretty walkable area. I live above a restaurant, case in point, right? New York is like that for the most part. And it is true that a lot of traditional America, you have your town, and then you have your farms, basically. My grandpa, my dad's side, he grew up in a farming community. They'd go to town sometimes and go see a movie and stuff. That's how America used to be, and that wasn't that long ago, if you really think about it, right? The birth of the American suburb is kind of what changed this. The creation of the American suburb, where you get your white picket fence and your golden retriever, and you live the great American dream. I mostly grew up in suburbs. I love the American suburbs. I love the fact that they exist. I hope it never goes away. And there are people trying. Actually, I want to do an episode on this. Maybe tomorrow or the next day I'll do something on it. There's a campaign to destroy the suburbs. The Trump administration recently did something to stop it, so stay tuned for a future episode. I'll get into that. But the American suburb was created by the car culture and by, of course, kind of the way that business has gone in the U.S. And it could be argued that it is true, as Jerry notes, the 15-minute city used to be kind of the norm. The suburbs changed it, and the commuting culture changed it. It's not technically a bad thing, but it is true the surveillance systems, the other problems tied in with it do make it a bit more nefarious, right? Another question, realitysreal.com. You say, no matter the money system, the quality of life is ultimately determined by human behavior. I would agree as well. Actually, even in terms of political systems, I think communism is fundamentally evil. I don't think you can ever have a good communist system. But I do think that, with most political systems, good or bad is not necessarily determined by the system. You could go back to monarchy. You can have some fantastic kings. You can have a sage king. You can live in perfect harmony and, heaven on earth kind of society. And under that exact same political system, you can have an absolute tyrant. You can have the worst king imaginable. Same thing with democracy or a republic. You can have a fantastic president. You can have a wonderful president. You can have a president that does everything you want him to do. You can have a president who loves his people. You can also have a president who is an absolute tyrant, who abuses his people, who torments everybody and hates you. You can also have that. And so good or bad is not necessarily determined by the system. It is often determined by the people in charge of the system. And that's one of the arguments, too, around trying to solve political problems purely through political means. I would actually argue that if you want to change a system, you need to change people. You need to make people good again. You can only do so much to change a society or fix a society's problems through the top-down means. Yes, you can get rid of a lot of the problems like bureaucracy and so on, which is again why I say communism is fundamentally evil, because it creates a system of tyranny, basically through its very nature, right? And it's based on class struggle. It's based on inciting struggle and conflict, basically. But for most other systems, if you want to have a good society, you actually need to affect the culture. You need to change people, because people are what are going to determine whether you live in a good place or a bad place. You can have the most beautiful neighborhood on earth, and if every neighbor in that neighborhood views every other neighbor as their enemy, you're going to live in a hellish neighborhood. You are not going to be happy. You can live in a very poor neighborhood, a very terrible area, and if the neighbors love each other and they treat each other well and they're forgiving, you're going to live in a wonderful neighborhood. So it really is people. It comes down to people, I think. All right, folks, that said, thank you so much for being here. Join me tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Happy Monday, everyone. I woke up thinking it was Tuesday, but happy Monday. I will see you tomorrow. Please share this episode. Give us a like. And as always, folks, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.